Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this WIOA Services Matrix Title I-B Adult and Dislocated Worker Services webinar. My name is Kirsten Bayer, and I'm with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. There's my email if you need to contact me after the webinar regarding any follow-up information. Just a couple of housekeeping things before I hand it off to the OET team to start the webinar. We are on Zoom webinar, not Zoom meeting. So it's a little bit different. You do not have a microphone or camera capability. We do this so that the presentation is a little bit more of a presenter audience format. We do ask that you participate in the chat, which I see a lot of you already are. You can also type any questions in the Q&A. We do have quite a few people on with us today. So just be mindful of that in the chat. We're going to have multiple opportunities for you to participate with polling as well as the chat and the Q&A. And then we will have an opportunity at the end of today's webinar with a Q&A where you can raise your hand on your Zoom toolbar and we can unmute you, and then you will have your microphone capability back. I will put the slide deck. I know a lot of people ask for the slides. I will put that in the chat here momentarily when I'm done talking. So just hold tight for the slides. I will also send that out along with the recording after today's webinar, probably tomorrow morning. So you will get that in your email. But today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording and the slide deck will be available on our website, the Illinois Workforce Academy website, which I'll put in the chat here momentarily, as well as Illinois WorkNet. It does typically take about 48 working business hours, but I've been trying to be mindful that you guys want this information as soon as possible. So I tried to get the recording out from last Friday's session yesterday. I sent that out. So I'm trying to do a quicker turnaround time for you all. We do have closed captioning on for accessibility reasons or note-taking purposes if you need that. And we'll start off with just some beginning polls. If you want to go to the next slide, Paula. And I believe the first poll is, okay, where's your local area at? So I've launched that, and you should be able to go ahead and take that. Give everyone a couple seconds for that. And while everyone is answering those polls, or that poll, I also just wanted to put a plug in for the Illinois Workforce Summit. It is coming up on May 8th and 9th. We are closing registration for that on April 30th. So if you have not registered yet, please make sure you do so. I can put the link in the chat here momentarily. We have been sending out marketing through our email listserv for multiple months since I think before Christmas. So if you are not on that email listserv, also make sure you sign up for that, and I can put that link in the chat too, because that's where we send out all of our professional development, including any of these sessions with WIOA I title services. So definitely make sure you're on that email listserv and registering for the summit if you would like to attend. I should let you all know that you also can attend the Illinois Workforce Summit virtually. So if you're unable to attend in person, you can attend virtually, and we will have live streamed virtual sessions as well. I'm going to end that poll, share the results. Looks like we have a good span across the state, which is always nice to see. We want to make sure we're hitting the whole state of Illinois. So I'll stop sharing that. And then our next one that we have, if you want to go to the next slide, Paula, is what is your role in the WIOA system? So we'll give everyone about 30 seconds to answer this poll. I see those are still coming in, so I'm going to wait just a couple more seconds. Still climbing. I don't want to close it down if people are still answering. Okay, it looks like it's slowing down a little bit here. While people are still answering that, I'll go ahead and put that in the chat for you all, the Illinois Workforce Summit website, where you can find all the information for the summit. We have registration information. We have an agenda at a glance, so that way you know like when meal times are, what meals are being served, et cetera. If you need to report that for any kind of travel information. We also have hotel information. We have 3 different room blocks, as well as nearby hotels too. We have app information. We use a conference app. If you are an in-person or a virtual attendee, that has all the information on there for that as well. So definitely make sure you check out the Illinois Workforce Summit. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end that poll and share the results. Looks like we have mostly career planners on with us today, couple performance managers, system administrators, some directors, local board staff, one-stop operators, and some other WIOA partners. So thank you for taking those polls. It's good to have that data and logistics for the OET team. I send that to them. So I believe if you want to go to the next slide, Paula, I will hand it over to Laura, Paula, and Jim to introduce themselves and start the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Dom. I am the Policy Unit Manager, and today we're going to have presentations by Paula Berry and Jim Potts of the Reporting and Performance Unit and myself. And we have put Mark off to the side since he has bad audio, and he will be manning the chat and the Q&As for us today. So he is here. So any questions, make sure you put those in the Q&A for him. Okay, next slide, Paula. Well, please note that this is an optional webinar for staff from LWIA 7. LWIA 7 will have its own webinar on April 10th to explain the specific changes being made to the Career Connect system. So anyone from LWIA 7 may choose to stay on and listen in. We're not going to kick you out. But if you want to go ahead and get off of this and attend the one on the 10th, that is perfectly fine as well. So I just wanted to make sure that you are aware of that up front. Now, today's objectives, we will be reviewing the Adult and Dislocated Worker Services tabs, prepare for the release of the Services Matrix version 2. Hopefully this webinar will help you understand the key changes for version 2 for Adult and Dislocated Worker Services. We're going to provide a rundown of the allowable services, including the definitions, the rules for reporting, and any other information that can help you understand the updates and changes. Hopefully, we'll discover more ways to use the document as a tool, such as for the development of the IEP or the career plan, and it's a guide for performance reporting. I'd like to remind everyone that this session, as well as our design, okay, never mind, sorry. Next slide. Sorry. This week's webinars today's webinar will focus solely on adult and dislocated worker program services. Before we get started, we want to make sure we're all on the same page and understand the service matrix and the services associated with it. By creating a comprehensive list of the allowable service options and definitions, we will be speaking from the same dictionary, and it'll be consistent across the state of Illinois. It will also establish clear definitions, so there should be no issues. The matrix has 5 categories of service: basic, career, which are staff assisted, individualized career, training, supportive services, and follow-up. Today we'll be talking about basic career, staff assisted, individualized, and training. Supportive services and follow-up will be on a later webinar. There are 3 general types of services that you should be familiar with. The first type is called enrolling services. We have active or enrollment, enrolling. These are all terms that are used interchangeably. I think you'll see active and IPATs. But when we're speaking generally, we call them enrollment or enrolling services. The second is called non-enrollment services and activities. And those are ones that do not trigger enrollment in WIOA or reset the 90-day exit clock to extend participation. It's just a mechanism for documenting an interaction, but it's not a reportable service for WIOA participants. The last type of service is same-day services. This type of service is specific to Illinois. The same-day service was created as a way to streamline services in the system and eliminate these type of services to remain open for an extended period of time. Same-day services are typically completed in a single day. Therefore, the service or activity starts and ends on the same day in the system, so it cannot be left open. They can be provided on one or more days, but each occurrence of that service is considered another episode of the same service and is entered as such. The adult and dislocated worker services template relates to performance and the minimum training expenditure requirement. The specific performance measures related to services are listed in a column entitled the performance measures. Please note that there are different measures tied to career and training services. This column is an excellent tool for ensuring that you know which measures apply to a service that you intend to roll a customer into. Additionally, each local board must spend at least 50% of its adult and dislocated worker funds on training services. Policy letter 8.4 outlines this requirement. The services matrix has a column that clearly indicates if the cost of a service would count towards that minimum expenditure requirement. So now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Paula Berry. Paula, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Good morning. Thanks, Laura. So the first slide or the first thing I'm going to do today is show you a demo of the actual document itself. So everything that Laura just explained is found in the services matrix. So let's get that. Hopefully everyone can see it's big enough. So when you're in the service matrix, there's a table of contents, and you can go to your tabs by clicking the link. So it's linked to each tab. We have the adult and dislocated worker staff assisted and individualized career services, talking about those today, and the adult and dislocated worker training services tab, also covering those today and some changes. Supportive services follow-up, and we will cover those in later webinars. I want to give you a glimpse into the first adult dislocated worker tab. We're going to be talking about this. What I am displaying today is what we referred to in the intro as, and you will all receive this also, is the red line version. So for everyone who's familiar, what's up with all this red? We changed the labels. We simply changed the label to match policy, and it makes more sense with the definition in certain circumstances. The top of the 1A, 1D individualized and staff assisted tab, you'll see a definition. It splits up the categories. You can scroll down in the matrix. It's an Excel document in this version. And you'll see more red. That's all new. As you get past the 6 staff assists, you see your separate categories. So if you're not seeing something, it's long lists in the tab. So keep scrolling. Next, I want to show you the columns we're talking about, these features in the matrix. So it's very, very informational. So you have the service labels themselves. Here, I'll go back. So that's the name of the service that you'll see in the drop downs in IWDS, the definition, and then the performance measures. So once you're in WIOA, these are the performance measures you'll be in. If you only receive the service, it ties them to each. Laura was talking about the minimum training expenditure. Does this service trigger that or count towards it? Nope. This is career tab. Is it a same-day service? And this is important. When Laura was explaining the difference between enrolling services versus those activities that are just for tracking things, this is the column that gives you the definitive yes or no between enrolling and non-enrolling. I hope I'm displaying this so everyone can see it. Quickly, I'll show you the training services. Okay, the training services is this Kelly green color. Same layout. I kind of went down a little bit. Same layout. We have all of the labels followed by a definition. Some of the training services version, you will see some red. Not as much changed in our adult and dislocated worker training services, so you won't see as much red. The WIOA performance measure triggers, you're going to see the training measures like measurable skills gain and credentials in certain training services, because as we know, they trigger those. And it's just a reference guide for this. The MTE 50, mostly yes here, these are your training services. And then triggers participation. Obviously, training service you're already a participant when you're getting these. So I want to point out one more quick feature of the matrix. So when we get to talk about details with the career services, the matrix is searchable. You can do a control find and type in words, and it will guide you to the reportable career service that you probably just provided at least once. So you can find specific activities. The definitions are long, and until we all have this memorized, I still have to search it. So, okay. Moving on to some rules and more details of the service matrix out of the demo. Okay, so as Laura talked about the common language, and it's why the matrix is so important. When we talk about a service and how we're supposed to report it, we will all have the same definitions across the board. Documentation and sources. Laura has put notes within certain services that say, hey, this counts. Here's what you're going to want to make sure you have in the file if you've done this. Rules reporting is very important for all of these services. As soon as you can get it in, the better. And when you do it, it needs to be added to a participant service record. The system has edits that track timing and follow through of certain services. As you know, when you're attempting to enter certain services in IWDS for one, you'll get certain messages. You can't do that, things like that, to help us, to assist us in being as accurate as possible. And then always integrity for reporting. So prompt, complete, and thorough case management. We want a fully robust record of everything you've done for everyone you're helping. And then accountability. This is a reminder that there is a 10-day rule for adding services, and that's in policy. So there is a little bit of wiggle room for data lag there, but really it's 10 days every single service should be added to your customers. This is more of a reference slide you can go back to, or a desk guide. So high level overview. There's critical steps associated with what we think that the service matrix can help you with. So it's a tool for figuring out critical steps like what you're putting in, what you're doing with your assessments, and then what you're putting in your career plans. Career planning service episodes, that single service label doesn't capture everything. There's so many more career services that you're doing that we want to start seeing and getting you credit for. The IEP is a big one. This is actually something that's been enhanced. The definition is updated in that red line version. We want all the goals and objectives listed. So again, with all the services and activities, if you don't enter them in the eyes of reporting and performance and policy in the federal government, they didn't happen. We'll never know. We're going to highlight the difference again between case notes, standard case notes, and certain episodes that trigger prolonged participation active services, and they extend exit. And then a couple new rules. There's no required sequences for any of the career services you provide for your adults and dislocated worker, but we are going to start requiring an initial assessment, a comprehensive assessment, and then the IEP. So that just makes sense, and we're going to get into that in detail today. Okay, so this, I won't read this entire slide, but I will point out it would be a great reference slide or rule of thumb when you're wondering, do I document an episode that is saying I'm providing a benefit to my participant or customer, or just a general case note? I've done something I need to know and track it, but it was not a benefit given to my individual. I just need to put it in as a general case note. So when you put in an episode, this is a service, and then it might be something to determine next steps. For example, if they give you a note from an employer, that is not a service you've given them. But when you take that note and decide to start providing other services because of what you saw, that's a direct benefit. This is counted as a career planning service, and you should document an episode. It extends their active participation, and this means they're remaining in the program. You're providing a service and determining that you're still helping them. A general case note is something like just communication, a need to know. It's information only, no real benefit to the customer and helping them keep employment or find employment, things like that. It's like if you held a conversation and they're just saying, I like my job. They don't need anything. So please just use general case notes when you're having conversations like that. You don't want them to extend their exit when you're not providing services, and that's per policy also. This is at the time when you're only doing general case notes. They're on their path. They don't need services. You start reviewing them to transition into follow-up or exit. Okay, this is another informational slide. I probably just covered it, but so it's questions. Ask yourself, should I document an episode or a case note only? And we always focus on, is there a benefit that was provided to the customer? That's an episode. They're participating. Case note only, tracking, administrative type functions, no offer or request for help or assistance, and it won't trigger exit. So anything you do that's a standard case note and not an episode attached to your services, that's not going to be their exit date. They're not continuing participation. Okay, so basic career services. And we talked about a ton of rules about all of them. A basic career service, otherwise known as universal or self-service only. We don't have a tab on the matrix because they're not enrolling services. They're administrative activities such as eligibility determination, intake, orientation. These are all considered your universal services. They're not triggering enrollment in your program. There's no tab in the service matrix yet. So that's one category. What we're really going to focus on today are the basic career, staff-assisted, and individualized career, followed up by training. So we're all familiar with our basic career that are staff-assisted. So the whole tab is career. They separate out staff-assisted. What happened because they do require significant staff involvement. They're all one-on-one. The red line version, you will see the words one-on-one in all of these service now. And what they do, it's kind of the first, think about this top of the matrix and these 6 career services as like the first phase of their participation. It's where you're getting, establishing your relationship, figuring out everything they need, as well as providing essential staff-assisted career services that you'll find clearly defined. Okay, they trigger enrollment. They're all same-day services. They're all done one day at a time. They're not left open. They're all enrolling. And the relationship to performance measures is, since they are enrolling, the second someone's enrolled, they're going to be in all your employment measures, second and fourth quarter after exit, and perhaps median earnings.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jim Potts, and I'm going to take over for a little bit to speak about the basic skills screening tool. Sometimes there's some confusion. Oh, well, first of all, let me back up a little bit. For those of you who don't know me, I conduct a lot of the training around Illinois Workforce Development System, as well as the eligibility for WIOA. During my classes for the last couple of years, I've been talking about how the service matrix was being updated by Paula and Laura, and they've done a tremendous job. And you're seeing the fruit of it, but it's really, the benefit's going to be to you guys if you use the matrix, because it's got so much information. I get a lot of calls and questions about, does this service count towards enrollment, or people think their client should be still enrolled, but they're having to exit them because supportive services did not include or were not enrolling services. So again, that matrix having all the way over to the right to tell what is an enrolling service and what's not is really going to be valuable. But back to this slide about the screening tool. A lot of questions come up, when to use the screening tool. So the screening tool itself should be used at the beginning of an assessment. So you've got a client who's going to move forward with WIOA, and we have to use the screening tool at the beginning. And where this comes from is we're trying to find out the details about the individual's circumstances. And if you ever look at the definition for basic skills deficient, there's a testing component, and that's those folks who score 8th grade or below on the standardized test. But there's a second part of the definition for basic skills deficient. And what it's tied to is a youth or adult that the individual is unable to compute or solve problems, read, write, or speak English at a level necessary to function on the job, in the individual's family, or in society. So we've used the screening tool to capture that second portion of the basic skills deficient definition. So we're using it for eligibility purposes because it's a barrier for youth clients, but it's a priority of service for adult clients. Again, as I've mentioned, it's got to be given before the formal assessments are. Now, one question comes up sometimes because if you think about assessments, the testing, we are allowed to take assessment tests that somebody has had in the past. That for an adult or dislocated worker, if they've used assessment tests up to a year prior to when they're going to begin their training, we can accept those. So in those cases, you would end up doing the screening tool after those tests, because it's impossible for you to have had them do the screening tool when the individual has already taken the test. So I want to make sure that's clear. It's not a given as part of the career service for adults dislocated workers or the objective assessment. Excuse me, it's not given as part, it is given prior to. If any questions are answered no on the screening tool, the individual is considered basic skills deficient. And a couple I like to always point out are the first question on a screening tool. It asks about, do you have your high school diploma or your general education development, your GED? And if a person does not, then they're automatically considered basic skills deficient. So that's something that's right off the top that you would understand. And then one of the other questions I think is really beneficial in the screening tool is the computers question. There's a question that asks about, Can you do basic tasks on a computer? So if you think about folks that don't have email addresses that sometimes you can run across, well, that's a kind of an indication that this could be a person that maybe doesn't know the basic facts or basic tasks on computers. But again, it's a way we can help people. The screening tool is. What we'll do after we get that completed screening tool, again, if anybody answered no, it makes them basic skills deficient. And then where necessary, referrals are going to be made as appropriate. And then that career planner, you must use that results of the tool as part of that initial assessment to determine the specific needs or accommodations or services that's going to be needed for this individual based on the results from the screening tool. So next slide, Paula. What we're going to talk about now is what are available for staff-assisted basic skills, or excuse me, basic career services. And there are 6 one-on-one settings. So when we're sitting down with somebody, we're previously talked about self-services where maybe an individual is just using the resource room or he or she doesn't need the one-on-one work. But if you've sat down and you're starting to work with a client, you're starting to enroll that adult dislocated worker. And after you've done that screening tool, you're going to start out with your initial assessment. And this is going to be a new rule that's required for all adults dislocated workers. They're going to have the initial assessments, and then they're also later going to have the comprehensive. And in some cases, maybe they're going to get combined at one time, but you're going to end up doing both and having to document both. So this is a new change that's going to be required after these changes to IWDS and Career Connect get implemented on April 11th. Some of the others referred to employment placement, staff assisted, a change, career information services, that's a label change, UI filing, and then assistance with FAFSA. Next slide, Paula. Some of the things we want to pass on is the update jobs search assistance, career information system. Both services are basic staff assisted career services if they're provided in a one-on-one setting. So when it's provided by the staff, it becomes beyond just information only and the customer benefits. So this is a revised, expanded definition for both the service matrix. Next slide, Paula. So you have job search, staff assisted, career information services. You know, over the years, I've noticed folks will sometimes use job search as just a catch-all when they're not sure what they're going to do with the client. So you still, if you're going to be recording that service, you got to look at the definition and you have to be helping the person. It's not just something that we're going to use because somebody's completed training and they're out job searching on their own. So what are the things, see the benefits, job hunting strategies, locate openings, employer contacts, help them write a resume, updates, cover letters, filling out job applications. And then of course you'd be, depending on where the client's at this time, if he or she's completed training, having a hard time getting jobs, what else is needed maybe? Do we need to update the IEP goals because there's something changed and maybe he or she is not able to get the job just after completion of training. So we want to look at that and evaluate that. And then career information services, focus on the information to choose the career. So this is when we're speaking early, if you think about it. During the beginning of an assessment, this could really come into play with our researching for opportunities, understanding the different occupational information data, and looking for the demand occupation, wages. You know, a lot of times we put this on the customer too, because you guys experience way more than us folks up here at the state, where people are expecting higher wages maybe than what they're possible. So maybe that's where you are with certain circumstances. So maybe that's where you'd research even with them to show what the possible salaries are after training compared to where they're at, or whatever, how you think it's best to utilize this. But that's where a lot of this career information services could come into play. And again, we talked about making sure training providers, the ETPL, it's got to be on the demand list. So those are all considerations. So next slide, Paula. Okay, where are we at? Okay, the individual. So this is kind of a slide that you touched on earlier, isn't it, Paula? If you're muted, Paula, I can't
Yeah.
hear you.
I covered the basic staff assisted.
Right. Okay, so this is back to where we're at because we kind of got off a little bit there. Okay, so now the individualized career services. When you think about you're doing your assessments, those are individualized career services. Then you develop your IEP with that. So you're using the information from the assessments, all the information you're gathering with the client to develop your IEP. It's going to outline the steps for the client to be successful. You're going to have objectives. The objectives are going to help the client reach his or her overall goals. You're going to have services underneath that's going to tie into what's going to be needed to have the person become successful based on your different the plan with the client. So on this, some are going to be same-day services, some are going to be left open. Also, speaking of those left open, timeliness of closing those services when they're completed, I want to stress at this point a little bit. We've had instances where people have services, they stay open, and then maybe they put other services in like supportive services, and then they'll go and backdate because maybe they left their training open and they were wanting to record a last transportation. So they kept their training service open and then they backdate it. And then we have a supportive service standing alone in a future date and it gets confusing. So again, making sure that we're timely keeping track of our services and accurately open and close them. Paula spoke back on, I think it was slide 11, about the data lag policy. We have 10 days when you must report a service that occurred. And again, you could probably get away with the 10-day of not closing because of the data lag, but to be timely, you want to make sure that you are closing those services when they're completed. So what are available on individualized career services? So here's one of the things that we do want to point out. There's new definitions. So you really got to be understand the new rules of it. There's also been changes. What used to be a group workshop, workforce research workshops, job clubs could be counted as a service. That's no longer allowed. Career planning changed. It used to be career planning case management. Now it's career planning. You have to read that definition. It's not as easy as just every time you're doing two-way communication is that career planning. You have to think about the definition of career planning and am I doing that with the client before I record that? And that's the same with all the services. We want to make sure that we're understanding the definitions. What we're finding, and this may change after this training, is people have a tendency to fall into a trap to record just the same services on many of the clients. And they don't really tailor it always to what's going on with every client. It's really imperative that you take credit for the work you're doing with the client. So that's the reason why we spoke about both the assessments, the individual and the comprehensive. You're doing it, because the initial individualized, it's really kind of what you're doing during intake as the process. You can't record it as a service during intake because the client has to be certified, but you're doing that. And then the comprehensive, you're definitely doing that anytime because you're getting more in the weeds of the hopes, dreams, ambitions of the client. And do they need to take assessment tests because they're going to go into training, things like that, more in depth. So you're doing both. So make sure to take credit for both. But all along, you see all the different work-based learnings that's available. There was a change of workforce prep activities, change to workforce preparation skills. It's really important also to make sure, again, I'm going to reinforce to everybody look at those definitions and learn the definitions. financial literacy services, out-of-area job search, relocation, and English as our English language education. So next slide, Paula. Okay, so update service matrix 25. Again, we've touched on it, but a need to always do the initial assessment, the comprehensive assessment, and development of IEP. This is something the internal logic within IWDS is going to require for any adult dislocated worker before you can put any enrolling services. Now, keep in mind, back up that slide, please, Paula. Any one of those three are enrolling. So the logic will let you put the comprehensive first or the initial first. But if you think about the order you're doing it, you're doing the initial. So that should go first. And it's really the date you certify the client, because you've went through the work to do that initial assessment while you're building the rapport with the client, and they're putting in their application. So to me, you'd certify that day, you'd be that initial assessment. If you're going to get into the nuts and bolts of what the client's going to need to build the IEP, that's when you have to do that comprehensive assessment. And you're going to have to do both of those before the system's going to allow you to record that development of an IEP. So next slide. And again, this is right out of the career planning policy guidance. So the initial, just as I just touched on, it's your first enrolling one-on-one based on your asking open-ended questions like Jody Sue Kelly's been teaching us. You're going to make sure to build that rapport and relationship. You're going to, the client had to complete the screening tool, but this is a good time now to interpret it, results, speak with the client about it where necessary. You're going to prep them for the comprehensive, because this is where you're going to be talking to them about really where they're going to be going with their plan. So you're going to start getting into the comprehensive discussions about it. You're going to try to find out things about their interests, barriers, challenges, trying just to get inside to know his or her hopes, dreams, ambitions. So next slide, Paula. And then that comprehensive, more in-depth, essential for a career plan development. You're going to use different diagnostic and proficiency tests. This is one of the neat things about changing over to IWDS 2.0. There's a lot of self-assessment tools that's on WorkNet that's going to be hopefully connected to where we can connect the results from those self-assessments. I think right now there's 9 different self-assessment tests on WorkNet. So those would get fed into what will be the current assessment summary screen in IWDS. They'll have an assessment, so they'll just be able to feed in what will be neat. And then also any of the other math and reading tests will get fed in based on this. But then also the interest profilers that we spoke about, and then the narrative section. This is where you are going to be tying together, similar that you do now, of what's going on with the client based on the results from the initial and this comprehensive. That's when you're going to put together the good narrative of the different interest, skills, the different categories, barriers that's listed on the narrative section. So next slide, please. So you have, again, the basic staff-assisted initial assessments on the left side, and then they got the individuals, comprehensive, and specialized, which is the more in-depth. We won't need to go through. We just touched on all these, but this is just a good slide to give you a cross comparison of the two. So next slide. So updates of the service matrix requires third, the development of IEP is a plan that outlines the customer's needed services based on the initial and comprehensive. The IEP is a service. And again, all 3 must occur, but you can't record the IEP until you've recorded the initial and the comprehensive. So that's going to be a logic issue that you're going to run into. And if you have staff that aren't in attendance of this, they need to listen to the recording. And if for some reason why they're not, you're probably going to get a lot of questions that's going to come to you if you're a manager. But hey, I can't seem to record this IEP. Again, You're going to have to record both assessments, the initial and the comprehensive, before the system's going to allow you to record the development of an IEP. Next slide, please. This reinforces more. It's a joint effort. It's the client's plan. You know, it's not our plan. If the client doesn't buy into it and believe it's their plan, you're going to find them not really working with you, because they'll be like, this dude don't know, or this gal doesn't even know what I'm wanting to do. So again, it's got to be theirs. Note that is no required sequence for those two assessments, but you have to put both those in. And then you're going to put in the IEP, and it should be descriptive. Tell the ongoing strategy, the objectives for the client to achieve. And they should know these. They have to know what the expectations of the objectives and goals, because that's driving everything. You know, we talk about a client go 90 days without service, has to be exited. Well, if our IEP is up to date, we know where they're at with their services. And that's when it's going to be time to move the person or transition him or her out, is once they've reached all their objectives, they've reached their goals, all services are closed, no further service are needed. That's when you'll know it's time to move the person, transition to the next phase, which should be the exit after 90 days of no service. But again, it all starts with this IEP. So it's the most important document that both the client and the career planner be on the same page. One of the things about IEP, it's not going to be an enrolling service once you do a change. It enrolls them at participation, but when you make changes to it, it's just a change. It's no longer going to extend participation, just a change of development of IEP. So this is a big change. It's actually an accurate change. If you think about it's your actions with the client that helps you update the IEP. That's this actual service. The IEP is just the living document that's going to track. So they give us credit for putting together the IEP, but it's not something you can just keep extending services by. And we see this sometime where a person maybe hasn't found employment, so the career planner just extends the development of IEP and just keeps pushing that person out. Well, that's not continuing to serve them. We could update the IEP and have a new objectives or goals and for helping them get employment, but it's not going to extend participations. But again, you do want to make sure that you are keeping those updated, but you're going to do it via the case notes and explaining what's going on. The rules for the episodes do not apply currently to LWIA 7 with Career Connect, because they have a different process. But once we're all in IWDS 2.0, everybody's going to be on the same page of this. But in those of you who've been in some of my classes, you've heard this before. The IEP is so important that the career planner and the coach be on the same page. I get questions and they'll like, well, how do you know when to exit somebody? And you know when to exit somebody when you look at their IEP and all the objectives and all the goals are closed. And successfully, hopefully, no further services are needed. That's when it's time for the client to move on, to move on out of the WIOA program. So next slide, please. All right, so we got a little poll question here. So paid work experience is included in the customer's IEP, and the customer successfully completed the paid work experience with their employer. Should you add an additional episode to the IEP? Yes or no?
Please respond to the poll that's been launched. There should be a poll that's been launched for this. So you can respond via that, and please don't respond via the chat.
But I can tell you, those in the chat's doing a great job with those responses. I think it should be pretty one-sided, the response, hopefully. All right, we got the responses pretty much done. For those with our no's, give yourself a pat on the back. The yeses, the customer just successfully completed it, so it's fine, but it doesn't require you to update the IEP. They've done what they've needed to do on it, so that's a great thing. If there was something that the customer had an issue with, or something where we had to change the IEP, that's when we would. But just completing something as you're going along is just good. You're moving through the plan. So again, when somebody is successfully moves through, that's a great thing. That means that service is closed. I mean, you might address in other services of things like when you're talking to the person, what's the next step he or she's going through, but you wouldn't have to change your IEP just because they completed the training or the paid work experience. So next slide. Customer completed a goal in the IEP by obtaining employment related to the training in a demand occupation. Does this require an additional episode in the IEP? All right, should the results be done? All right, so we also have a similar where the customer completed the goal. We have similar of a yes or no's. Again, did the customer, he or she, and we're thrilled that they have obtained their employment. The biggest thing we're going to go with now does it change the IEP? It's not going to change the IEP, but what it is going to do, it's going to drill in to open up our follow-up services, if you think about it. So for this poll, there was no change to the IEP. Congratulations for completing the training. But what this tells us now, they've obtained full-time self-sustaining employment. So we know whether they're still in service or not, we're going to open up our follow-up service. So that'll come at a later date. But on this, okay, there's a point I just seen, maybe we need a definition. So maybe we'll go back through Paula or Laura, because it seems like there's some misunderstanding of this. So go back through the definition of development of an IEP, or do we have that coming up on the slides?
No, it would have been before all of this. So it's the episode, because all same-day services, because they can be, because they are typically same-day services and you enter them once, and it could be something that you are putting in more than once. Supportive service for transportation could be a good example. You don't want to put in a supportive service on transportation every single time you provide that. But what you want to do is go in and put in that initial service of supportive service transportation, and then you add an episode every time. The same is going to be true for the development of an IEP with this changes that are going to go into the system. Is instead of having the development of an IEP and you having to go in and put in a new service every time you do it, you're going to put in the initial time you development as a single service, and then all changes thereafter will be an episode. So you will enter an episode into the system. And Jim has some excellent training on how to enter those services into the system that you can access. Hopefully that answered the question.
And also, if you think about your IEPs, it's the changes, when there's going to be a change to it, is when something goes wrong typically. If everything goes well, you've developed the plan, you've set it out at the beginning, And we have our goals, our objectives, we have our services needed to reach that. If everything's going well, well, then hopefully we don't have to make a change to the IEP. But sometimes stuff happens in life, right? Where maybe somebody thought they could complete a training and they don't. They have to drop out or whatever the circumstances, or maybe they need a tutor to help with the class. That's when we have the changes, not necessarily every time they complete something in it. And hopefully that helps clarify a little bit. Next slide, please. So we have a little scenario. A customer no longer wants to be an RN. Oops, no longer wants to be an RN, which was the established original goal, and now wants to be an aviation mechanic. This requires new goals to be established to become an aviation mechanic. The new goals are developed as part of the IEP and updated on the paper file. The original IEP was developed on 11/20/24, and the customer staff met on 3/15/25 regarding the change in training career plans. What are the required steps of the career planner / coach in handling the IEP document, the customer's plan? Choose the best single answer or the best answer. Yeah, I kind of gave it away during my little spiel right before. You can go ahead and end this poll here. Right. And if you think about it, sometimes these multiple choice questions, we have a tendency to look at the first one and, hey, that's what we know we have to do. But in this case, what we're looking for is all three, because the individuals changed their total goal. They've needed the customer to make sure it's buy-in, the customer understands, so the customer's getting a section of it. And then we wanted just to add the additional episode. But keep in mind, the additional episode is not extending the participation once these changes go into play. You had the original date of when it began. It just shows when it was updated when you extend that per additional episode. Next question, please. Next slide. Career planning. Again, this is a change. It used to be career planning case management. It's now career planning. It's really important to understand this definition. Career planning is based on one-on-one in-depth coaching or counseling, discovering and analyze of whether the customer's existing skills are in demand in a local economy, providing materials, recommendations, suggestions, or advice to assist the participant in making occupation or career decisions, not case management, not case management administrative duties, tracking, or data entry. So in this case, we've been so used to using career planning case management as our two-way communication. You wouldn't do that unless it fits in to this definition. So you have to keep that in mind. This new definition removes the component of case management. Paula or Laura, do you have anything to add on this section? Because I know it's an important detail that needs stress. So I want to make sure I do justice to it.
Yes, no, I think that I was trying to see if there's a certain, see what slide are you on? You're on 40. Okay. Well, there was a previous slide, I believe, that outlined the difference between a general case note and a, I think
Yep.
did that.
Yeah, we did. Yep.
Yeah,
And that's
so I would refer to that, whether it's an episode or a case note. Slide 15, I would definitely refer individuals to review that slide again. It might, after hearing all of this, it might make something click now that you're reading this, now that you're hearing all of this. So I would definitely look at slide 15 to explain the difference.
That's a great point. And again, just as Laura said, and this is a thought process you all have to have each time you have your communication with your client. And did I provide a service? And if so, which one? And if I didn't provide a service, but it is two-way communication, like maybe I'm your client and I'm in a training program and everything's going fine and I have no needs. And that's what you find out. Well, you didn't provide a service, but you want to take credit for that two-way communication. So you just put it in the regular case note. To where if, man, I'm really struggling and I think I'm going to need a tutor because I'm falling behind this class. And then we end up doing some work with them, getting a tutor or whatever the example. Then you start serving. So again, making sure that when we're having that two-way communication, are we serving or just having our check-in with the client, make sure everything's going well. So next slide, please. Short-term pre-vocational service and workforce prep. It used to be activities. Now it's called skills. And again, I'm going to reinforce the need to make sure that we're reading these definitions because they're new and have been changed. So both services are individualized career services. Short-term pre-vocational services are for individuals who already possess skills but need assistance to upskill or obtain a credential or certificate in their specific occupation. Or workforce preparation skills is broader and focuses on preparing individuals for workforce and further education and training. Again, the definitions mean so much to you. Anything I needed, Paula or Laura, on this slide?
No, I don't believe so.
The next one explains it too.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, so this is really good and helpful. I like myself the slides that have these comparisons of what things are. So what's been added, if you see for under workforce prep skills, digital literacy has been added on that. And then it just gives you a lot of different scenarios underneath of how it could be utilized. Focus on fundamental job requirements. Individuals who are already in demand occupations prep for licensing or certification exams. Enhance for occupational type classes to gain technology skills. And then on the other side, for the workforce prep, what you're going to find is workforce prep is going to be one of those that if somebody's having a hard time finding a job, these are the things that you might end up helping him or her with, because maybe I've got my education, but I'm just having a hard time during the interviews or some of my soft skills. It's just you help coaching me up on job prep or interview prep, things like that. So this could be a really beneficial to workforce prep for somebody that gets through training and hasn't yet found employment. So next slide.
I have one thing to add for this slide, Jim, to highlight. Yep. So when you talked about career planning, and then now we're getting into other enrolling, extending career services, what we're finding for reporting purposes is that a lot of times I see things that you're doing that are workforce preparation totally separate from career planning, like when you're discovering and getting information and doing those open-ended questions. So it's really important if you realize that you've provided these employability skills and all this stuff, you're adding a completely separate service outside of career planning and getting credit for all the separate career services. So that's all I want to say, as well as short term. But I do think that a lot of these workforce preparation skills that everyone's helping customers with is getting rolled up under career planning. So I just want to point that out. Thanks.
That's a great point, Paula. So I think, go back to that slide one more time, please, Paula. So again, I will reinforce, and because I see this often, folks get through training and then some of the staff, we don't know what we're going to do with them next. Again, if they've gotten through training and they're not employed, they're not ready to exit. So if we've missed something and they're not doing it, that's where this workforce prep could come in real beneficial. So it wouldn't be just career planning over and over. Serve them, give them something that can help them get that job. And so some of these will be used after those individuals finish training if they haven't gained employment. So next slide. Another poll, service entry scenario. Staff spent several hours over the course of a few weeks working with employers to find job opportunities related to customers' goal and assisted the customer throughout the process, application, interviewing, being hired, etc. Which career services should be documented for the customers? Wow, it's a lot of stuff, huh? We got some questions. We're going to make them just think out loud and write them out.
We have a poll.
Okay.
Oh, where is it?
Yeah, the poll's not up. We're going to have some good comments and they're going to have them all listed.
One second. I'm sorry. Poll. Here we go. There we go.
Okay, again, staff spent several hours over the course of a few weeks working with employers to find job opportunities related to the customer's goal and assisted the customer throughout the process, application, interviewing, being hired, etc. So which of those should be documented for the customer? And think about those definitions we just covered. All right, we should have that right now, right? Paula, you want to speak here? So what we're looking for was referral to employment and slash placement assistance. Paula, if you're here, would like you to speak.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, so I will explain this. So I didn't mean this to be a trick question with what had been covered before, because I know that we did a comparison so everyone understands career information services and job search assistance. So the correct answer to this from the definition is referral to employment and placement assistance. And the reason is why is that the staff, the key words are they were working with employers to find job opportunities based on everything that the customer has told them. Then they also went on to assist the customer with interviewing in the application, as well as they were like working with employers and those type of relationships to place them. I do understand those who answered job search assistance. It was covered and we provided more on that definition in prior slides. So I get that. The reason we wanted to highlight this is because this is another career service. It's at the top of the matrix, those first 6, that based on case notes and episodes in career planning, I think it's being done quite a bit. It just doesn't get reported by itself as a standalone career service. So it's really important to get credit when staff is doing this. So anyway, thanks. That I just want to explain that. I didn't mean it to be a trick question with the emphasis we did put on some job search assistance earlier. Thank you, Jim. There's another question.
Full disclosure, she confused me too, so my apologies. I was thinking of something else myself, but I wasn't reading my matrix. Go back, please.
Oh, sure. Question 5.
The response. So poll 5, service entry scenario. I'm working on an IEP with my customer. They just graduated from nursing school, and we're assisting them in studying for exams for their license and paying for their exam fee. The definition for short-term pre-vocational services, job readiness, and workforce prep activities look like they provide some of the same activities or impart similar activities. Which service should be documented to report the benefits provided for the customer? Uh, Go ahead, poll results.
We still have some people answering, but do we want to
Okay, we
close?
gotta keep moving.
Okay, it's being shared. The poll results are.
Excellent. All right, and look, that's the results. Those are the answers that we're looking for. And again, Paula's the poll writer. So do you have any things you want to add, Paula? If you are, you're muted.
Nope. That I saw the majority were A and D, and that is the correct answer.
All right.
These were developed straight out of some emails back and forth with all of you, or a combination of them, and just to try to highlight the differences between short-term and workforce prep. That's happening a lot out there, and just want to make sure you get credit for it, as well as we must document the supportive services for the payment. Thanks.
Excellent. Another poll question. An adult customer, Annie, and her career coach, Noelle, meet to discuss and look at different types of that are out there that may be of interest. Noelle fully informs Annie about the state ETPL and how it can help choose a provider, like a college or training program. They spend at least an hour or more examining the information of providers can train for certain jobs, programs, performance outcomes, costs, locations. Which service should be documented to report the benefits of providing the customer? All right. The time, no, we got it's time. We got to move on.
Yep, it's being shared.
Yep, and that's the answer. Was the career information systems was the one for that Paula had put up for the correct answer. Paula, do you have some information to provide also?
I don't have anything to add. If anyone has questions or misunderstanding about this, please put it in that FAQ or the chat, and we'll be happy to address it in a session next week. And this is just solely based on the definition for career, the updated definition. So in this services matrix version 2 for 2025, this was enhanced and the label was changed. So just putting awareness out there to please take credit when you do this in addition to all your career planning and other services. That's it.
And next slide.
Yeah.
And look, and Nikki had a great point. It'd be helpful to have the definitions. In here, we're just going to have a little definition for this. So we'll see if we have any poll questions following. So group workforce research workshop jobs clubs. Again, policy reporting changes. These are not staff assist or individualized. It's not done in a one-on-one setting. It's moved to the bottom of the tab of non-enrolling. So I know a lot of times we've had folks we put, and this will be a catch-all for working with folks, but it's not going to be an enrolling service, or it will not extend any participation. So it'll remain an IWDS as a drop-down, but it's just going to be for tracking purposes. It's not going to be an enrolling or extend participation. So next slide. So if last service exit date is a group workforce research / job club activity and no other one-on-one staff assisted was provided for exit, then what'll end up was entered. You need to find the matrix to find your actual service, because this is not going to work. So look to see what you've done with the person, find the on the matrix and find an enrolling service, because what you're going to have is a client that is over the exit limit if this was his or her last service. So again, it's going to be so important that we understand those matrix definitions and we're accurately recording what we're doing with the clients. Next slide.
Thanks, Jim. I think this is me.
Okay.
I realize that we're running kind of tight on time, so I'm going to do this fairly quickly. There's not a lot really that's changing on training, so this shouldn't be too much here. But we're talking about the training slides right here. Go to the next slide, Paula. What we're talking about here is training services must be provided either through an ITA or through a training contract. 1019-22 change 1 that we had provided last session for you to look at as homework is very good in providing when and how to report specific training functions. And so if you have any questions, review that 10 that may answer those questions for you. But note that there's not a same-day service for this slide or for this tab, because training services are not same-day services. Also, make sure that you know your local board's ITA policies. There may be a limit on the funding or the duration of the participants' training program. So make sure that you look at that and are aware of those before you consider putting someone into training. Okay, next slide. The tab will denote, like we said, the performance measures, just like all the others, whether it's an ITA funding, ITA funded training, all has to result in a post-secondary credential and an MSG, and the ETPL applies. Contract funded training, post-secondary credentials do not apply. These should result, however, in MSGs, and contact funded training is the ETPL does not apply. We do have those in the definitions, so that should be easy for you to find. And all training services count towards the 50% minimum training expenditure requirement. Next slide. This lists all the training services. The only two that are changing are prerequisite training and future scheduled service. The prerequisite training, again, this is coming from that 1019-22 change 1. The education system and the workforce system are using two different definitions for prerequisites. For prerequisites, we'll talk about a little bit here. The ETPL will apply and the program must lead to a credential. So how do you know when it is a prerequisite? So the next slide is if it's a prerequisite, when it's a program of study that is required to move that person to the next phase in their career pathway, to get to their final program of study. These services must be established in the IEP and the career plan. An example of this would be a CNA or an LPN to an RN. So if the CNA or the LPN course or programs are required before they can enter into an RN program, then those programs of study of CNA and or LPN would be considered prerequisite training. So we have to remember we're looking at programs of study. So the CNA is a whole program, the LPN is a whole program. That is prerequisite training as far as workforce is concerned. Yeah. Do not document prerequisite training when it's just classes or courses that are required as prerequisites by the college or the training provider in their catalog to enter into a program of study. So, example, if they are lumped all together, if it says, they need to have a course before they can get into the program of study, then that's not a prerequisite. That's a prerequisite as far as the training provider and the college is concerned, but that is not a prerequisite as far as the Department of Labor is concerned. So any classes or courses that are part of the program of study, and so those are rolled into the occupational skills service line. So those aren't prerequisites. Those are rolled into the occupational skills training line. Next slide. General education courses listed as courses in a program of study and the course catalog are considered part of the entire program of study and included in the occupational skills training line. So perfect example here is if someone needs Bio 100 in order to get into a program of study, that's a single course. It is listed as in the program of study and the course catalog, and it'll be included in that occupational skills training line. As far as general education courses are concerned, another example would be as part of the program of study for a radiology technologist, English 101 is required. If that individual takes that course, and I think I'm getting ahead of myself, is taking that course prior to getting into starting the program, because there's a wait list and they're accepted, but they're waiting. If they go ahead and take that course, that's fine. You can pay for it. It is part of the program of study in the course catalog. So, and it should be included in that occupational skills training line. Okay. Hopefully that was pretty straightforward. If not, I know that we've had several questions on that since that 10 came out. And so if you have any questions on that, please make sure you put them in the Q&A. We want to make sure that we get them answered properly and go to the website and put them in there. The next slide is the other change, and that is future scheduled service. According to the Department of Labor, we may not use the terms planned, gap, or holding. Those are old terms and we cannot use them. They're not allowed. However, we can say that the individual is scheduled for a future service. This does not extend participation. It's just an activity. It's a placeholder. It is to be used rarely and only in extenuating circumstances. And monthly check-ins are a good practice to ensure nothing has changed with your participant. Again, it's a non-enrolling activity. So an example would be if a participant was set to start a pipe fitting wrap, but they broke their hand and they can't participate until the next session begins in a month. Then you could put them in that future scheduled service. Note in the notes with that what happened, and then that's a placeholder so that anyone looking at that individual can see that what's going on with them, and they're not wondering, okay, well, why is this person not in there? Another example would be if a participant's in RN training phase that requires clinical rounds, but they have an injury that prevents them from being on their feet. That's another reason why you can say, put in future scheduled service, explain that situation, and then that explains why they didn't maybe finish in time. So that's that's all about. Next slide is work-based learning. This is just a tab that is a summary tab. All of these services are included either in the adult and dislocated worker tabs or in the youth tab, but this is just a summary so you can see all work-based learning all at once. It does tell you which programs it's allowed, what the service label activity is. So again, this is just a summary. So if we have any questions or comments, next slide, you can submit these questions or comments through this Title I-B service matrix page, FAQ page. keep them brief, keep them general, don't put any PII in there. Send those questions in, and we have a session scheduled on April 15th at 10 o'clock to go over some of the more frequently asked question and answers. We will definitely respond to all questions and put them out there in the Q&A for all to see. So just make sure you go to that link and put that link and ask your question there. Let's see here, we're almost there. What's next? We're having okay. Next one. There you go. So our next session is the 11th. We're going to be doing youth services on the 11th. The go live date is that evening overnight. So changes will not be, you won't see the changes in the system until the 14th. On the 15th, we'll go over supportive services and follow up again. No changes to those, but we just wanted to make sure that we touched on them again for new individuals. And then we will have the open question and answer session where we respond to all the questions received through that link, through the FAQ link. The next slide is a set of resources for you if you need to look anything up. These are a wealth of information, and pretty much everything that you need to know is in there. And we've got the contacts here on the next slide. So if you need anything, myself, Paula, Jim, here's our contact information, carbon copy mark on anything sent to Paula, so the two of them can try to tackle everything as much as they can. I just wanted to say thank you. It is 2 minutes till, but we do want to open it up and see if there's any questions, or if there's anything that Mark wants to talk about. So.
Hi, thanks everyone. This is Mark Burgess, Performance Manager. Appreciate everyone joining us today. We do have quite a few questions that we've answered in the chat. Some of those were answered during the presentation, but we have quite a few left over in the chat and a couple in the Q&A. Unfortunately, we don't want to keep you any longer than we have. So like Laura said, we'll address any of those that we haven't responded to in chat. We'll put those into that April 15th session. We'll also consider whether they're appropriate to add to the FAQ that's online that Laura spoke to. But respecting of your time, I think we'll hold to answering any additional questions at this time. Please keep submitting them in the FAQ, though. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody have yourself a great rest of your day. And this is our time, I believe.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'll go ahead and close this out.